we have a quorum, so we have two directors who are running just a little bit late, but we have a quorum, so why don't we get started? And our first order of business, well, let me say, welcome to the April 11th, 2018 regular meeting of the Garrison Union Free School District Board of Education. As always, our regular first item of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we get to Sue and the first item of business, which is a summary budget presentation, it is my sad duty to relate that we have lost, due to untimely death, another Garrison School graduate, Casey Gell, class of '09, passed just last week. So if I could ask you to join me, please, in a moment of silence in his memory. Thank you all. It is
All right, good evening, everybody.
too painful to, I'm sorry, I just wanted to say, there have been thousands of words spent on the topic already, including by this board, and it's just too painful to bear sometimes. So, sorry, Laura.
No, sorry. Just wanted to welcome folks. We're doing our budget presentation for 2018-19, and just welcome and thank you for inviting us here to present. After many discussions with various teams within our school, transportation, special education, teachers, administration, I'm happy to report that we feel that we have developed a 2018-19 school budget that allows us to continue to support our district priorities that we have set as a school community, and that at the same time is fiscally responsible and respectful of our taxpayers. What I wanted to highlight was that there are many things that we are continuing. We are continuing to work with our words of advice. We continue to work to expand our technology infrastructure and instructional-wise. We will continue to encourage in and outside of the school district professional development for our teachers. We will continue to grow our classroom libraries and assessment tools. We will continue our many trainings, PBIS, VBS, CPR, AED, ERP. I can explain them at a later date. We will continue our partnerships with folks such as Hudson Valley Seed and GSAF, and most importantly, we will be able to continue to provide the quality education and love and care for our students. And so with all of that information, we will talk about numbers.
Get into the numbers, and I broke down into sections to go into a little more detail than we have in the past. And this portion here is the general support section. That includes expenses for Board of Ed, central administration, finance, staff, which is mainly legal, central services, which keeps the building up and running, and other special items. And that whole section is going up by $25,270, just basically pretty much that will roll over expenses. The second section is the instruction section, and I have this broken down into admin and improvement. That would be basically anything with the principal's office, teaching and tuition. That's all our general education and special education. That includes the tuition expenses, instructional media, and then pupil services. That's the guidance and those type of services that we have at the school here. The largest increase, which I know I mentioned in the past, is in special education. We're just finding that we have students, we have more students in special education and more students requiring different services. So that area has gone up quite a bit this year.
Sue, do you want to take questions as you go through this, or do you want to
Sure.
hold them?
Should I go
Yeah,
back?
I just want to go back to special items. What is that again?
I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Special items are more like printing, general rentals of the copiers, let me think.
Paper? Or is that central services?
Yeah, that would be under central services, so,
Internet? The internet?
no,
I'm just throwing that
I don't
out
think what else is in
there.
that
I
section.
could guess forever.
Any kind of communications that we send out, some postage and all those central services are in there,
That's fine.
so. And any questions on this side then? With the,
Just
the
briefly,
instructor?
the staff is what? What's under the expenditure that is staff in that first slide?
Oh, in the first slide, that is mainly legal expenses, but,
Oh, okay.
and it's, we have several different attorneys and, our financial services,
Gotcha.
consultations are under that as well.
I see, okay.
Okay, so any questions on this side before I go forward with the instruction?
Just how do we achieve a reduction of $3,800 in Gen Ed?
Because there's a little bit of a change, going from gen ed to special ed.
Okay, well, so, yeah.
So normally we would see that go up, we're just seeing more of a shift into, needs in the special education area.
Is, are you slotting RTI under special ed, or are you sliding that under general ed?
It would be more.
Depends on who's doing the servicing?
Yeah, it depends, I'm not sure, off the top of my head, I'm not sure of the salary, but, any services in that area would be considered special ed, yes. But the salary should, you know, is probably under there as well.
Okay, I got you.
The next slide shows two different areas. We have pupil transportation, and that's just going up slightly. It's $7,517. We normally don't get the actual increase until May. It's usually whatever the May CPI is, and we don't know that, so it's an estimate at this point. And then what they call undistributed is actually broken down into employee benefits, debt service, and any kind of interfund transfers. And interfund transfers are going from the general fund to mostly to the special aid fund. We're required to cover a certain amount of summer expenses.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And employee benefits include healthcare?
Yeah, and that's the other big increase. That's $60,141, and that's due to increase in cost and increase in usage of the health benefits and a little bit in the retirement system as well. Okay, so the overall budget, we're looking at a $333,000 increase, which is a 3.15% increase. It's a little bit higher than what we presented the last time we met 3 months ago. I know we had a couple of cancellations, so we haven't met really. I think it's probably a month. But and the increase is really as we're honing in on the special ed meetings, we're finding that we're predicting more services and more out-of-district placements possibly next year. So we're trying to plan for that now. So how are we going to fund that? We're looking to use $866,029 of our fund balance and reserves, $40,500 in interest. We're expected to get, was a little bit of a bump up in our state aid from the first prediction. I want to say it was about $20,000. So we're going to get $907,528 for an overall estimated revenue of $1,814,057. That means we need to raise $9,094,845 in a tax levy to make up, everything for the budget.
When I look at that slide, I see, I'm looking at the fund balance, right?
Yep.
And the debt, okay, so debt service is going one way, the fund balance. Is that fund balance 253 what we spent or what we budgeted for? When I look at the fund
Are
balance.
you looking on this slide or?
Yeah, 2016, 27, sorry.
So-
16, 17, is that 253 what we budgeted or what we spent?
253 is what we budgeted, it's not what we spent. This is a comparison of what we had.
Of previous
budgeted.
budgets,
Yes.
okay, thank
So
you.
this is not a breakdown of the fund balance, it's actually.
I know.
A breakdown of what we budgeted in the 16, 17, 17, 18, and the 18, 19 school year. I don't have the reserves up here now, but that's actually, they had us this year reported on the property tax report card, so that should be in your packets as well. So the breakdown of what we have in reserves is there,
Right,
and a breakdown of what is in fund balance.
okay,
So
so
this is basically just showing you what we budgeted the last 3 years. It's a comparison of the revenue and where it's coming from. So there is, an increase of the state aid over last year, which is good. I think everybody got a little bit of a bump this year. And, the reserves, we're looking to use more reserves. If in fact, what we're thinking is gonna happen, next year as far as placements and stuff happens.
Okay. And we, in the fund balance, that's 288,907 in 17, 18? That's what
Yes.
we budgeted for this year. Do you think we're gonna end north of that, south of that, or somewhere around that?
The overall in-district funds of the 774, I'm thinking that it's probably gonna end up maybe around half, using about half of that amount for this current,
Okay,
so,
thank you.
you're welcome. So this slide, although it might be hard to see, is showing the fund balance projection. And it's really just an estimate of if we're dipping into the fund balance at a rate of $200,000 a year versus $300,000 a year versus $400,000 a year, when do we get to that point where we actually have no more fund balance if we don't go for an override type of thing? And
No more fund balance.
right now we've been sort of hovering in the middle, so I still think that we're in a position where we shouldn't need to go for an override this year or next year, but I still think that it's something that we need to discuss and look at and keep an eye on, because we don't want to fall off suddenly. So I see it's coming. It's coming, but it's not here yet.
Absent any changes to things like the tax levy cap or
They're not totally.
fundamental changes in the financing.
There has not really been any change with this budget passing. I don't see that happening unless we have a new governor, possibly. But I don't see that changing at this point. And this slide here just shows you the tax levy increase, and this is a slide we've seen before. I think at the last meeting. It's just to show you that we've been staying under the cap, within the cap. This year, the tax levy increase would be a 2.44% increase, and that is because we're planning to use fund balance. So the estimated tax rate for Phillipstown for the 18-19 year would be $20.92 a thousand. And for Putt Valley, $9.80 thousand. That's a 50-cent increase for Phillipstown and a 24-cent increase for Putt Valley. And these are estimated at this point because until we get the actual tax rates in August, we're not going to know exactly what it'll be. But this shows you what we've done over the last 10 years pretty much. in tax rates.
If we're at just go back, at 2.44 increase on the tax levy, what was our formula cap? Or is that exactly at the cap?
At 2.4.
2.44?
We're exactly at the
To the
cap.
dollar,
Yes.
very good, well done.
We are exactly at the cap.
Okay.
So people might ask, well, what does that mean for me? What is my tax increase? If your home is worth, say, $700,000, Phillipstown has an equalization rate of 0.4685, so your assessment would be $327,950, and then you would take the tax rate of $20.95 and times it by that. Putt Valley is at a full assessed rate, so if you have a house that's worth $700,000, you take $700,000 times it by the $9 and how much it was rate. And the next steps are we have a public hearing at the board, so you get to hear about the budget one more time. Although hopefully the board will adopt it tonight. Public hearing is May 2nd, and the public budget vote is May 15th. So please remember to vote, May 15th.
Sue, just being clear about context here, our total year-over-year spending increase is $333,258, right?
Yes.
The budgeted increases for special education and benefits, which includes health, is $289,736, or 87% of the year-over-year increase can be attributed to special ed and to increases in benefits,
Yes.
specifically healthcare. This is an important, I think it's important, if I have that right, and I think I do, that's an important set of numbers to keep in mind as we think about what it takes to actually run a district. Because neither of those costs are directly within the control of the administration or the board. They are effectively mandated, that is to say, out of our hands. I'm looking for concurrence. Yes.
Yes,
All right.
I'm shaking my head yes, but yes, you're absolutely right. That very little, everything else is pretty much a rollover,
Right.
whether it's contractual or salaries, it's rollover. But you didn't really add anything new. We're just basically keeping things as usual. So.
Okay. Thank you. Other questions for Sue or Laura? You'll see on the agenda that we have, as an action item later in the meeting, the formal adoption of this budget. The line-by-lines provide somewhat more detail than is in the presentation, are in your packages. But if there are substantial questions, such that anyone on the board would like to spend more time with the line-by-lines, we can defer the approval of the budget for a week, but that would require us to schedule a special meeting to come in and approve it. If we're satisfied with the content, the structure, and the answers to the questions we received tonight, we'll go ahead and approve this. So, one more time, if there are any questions or anything you need, anyone wants clarified, this is the time to ask. No?
I have a question. Just one, and that it's probably the most predictable question is and the question I always ask, which is, do we have what we need to meet the priorities that we've set forth? Do we have the personnel, the positions that we need, or do we at least have the budget so that we can, so that the way we're going to meet the priorities is flexible enough? In other words, do we have the framework so that we're not here next year asking, why didn't we do X last year?
I think with this budget, we're able to continue the good work that we're doing, but as you see in the especially in the special ed area, the needs are changing, and not only are we sending more students out of district, but the enrollment is changing as well. The population is changing. So at some point, I think we need to really seriously talk about what is it that our students need. Is it math intervention? Is it another special ed teacher? some change in the program. I think that's where our next serious conversation should be going.
Can you reiterate that a little bit? I just got distracted for a second. No, just that last bit.
It was that we're seeing our population change, and you can see it in this budget that we're proposing, that the numbers in special ed are increasing. So that sort of reflects the changes that are happening in the district and the population and the enrollment and the students we're taking in that's showing up here.
Mhm.
And so I think it would be important conversation to talk about what is the personnel that is needed, what are the programs that are needed, and that will cost money because there's an increase in need. So that may be a special ed teacher, that may be a math interventionist, that may be somebody else that we have identified that is an integral part of a student's education.
But then that would make a difference too. You'd end up checking the numbers if it would end up being cheaper to get more in-house rather than send them out, right?
And I was gonna say, what I'm also seeing is that there's more diverse types of services that are being required. So, being small here, it's hard to accommodate. We are sending out more kids, I think, because of that.
And we've been doing a lot more training for our staff here. So when I said VBS and PBIS and CCIS, those are all social therapeutic crisis intervention, behavioral programs, vital behavior services. Those are to sort of empower us with the information needed to meet the needs of our diverse and changing community. So even in the professional development part, we've increased funding.
I would just say that I think I'm not so sure the population shifted. I think the commitment to serving the entire population has changed. I think we're more honest and more committed to serving every student we possibly can, and I think maybe that looks different when you try to serve the kids in the most honest and forthright way possible. And I think, so I'm not sure the population's changed as much as I think the administration's done a good job of saying this is what our kids need. Let's get it to them, and I think that is significant. So I think it's a reflection actually of the effectiveness of the administration more than the population.
I think it's
That's
both.
praise.
Thank you
I know
for
it's
that.
rare to
Thank
hear.
you.
I know it's rare to hear.
I think it's a combination.
Comes out of my mouth.
I
once
think
in a
it's
while.
a combination of both.
And the team of teachers that we have here. And
It's not to
staff.
say anything about anybody else. It's just I think it's doing a good job.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Laura or Sue? Otherwise, Laura, you're still on, man. Superintendent.
Okay.
Thank you, Sue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It is it's an enormous amount of work, Sue, and if
Yes.
we haven't said it already, or we have, but let's repeat. We
Yes.
generally appreciate how much time and effort goes into getting us to this point each year.
And again, yes, accolades to Sue and the entire team because we have multiple conversations. We agree to disagree, we battle it out, all in the name of making sure that our kids get what they need. And in the end, I think we come out with a strong plan and a strong proposal. So thank you to the whole community. Just a couple of items. I'm not sure if you knew, but it's 2018 and it marks the 50th anniversary of Hello Dolly. So there is a 6-month season of educational events and celebrations starting this spring for Hello Again Dolly. Because I believe Hello Dolly was shot in Garrison, in Cold Spring, and Peekskill about 50 years ago. So
West Point.
and West Point. So we've been asked to participate in the events, and our amazing arts department has been working on some plans that include some hat making of that time, and performing Put On Your Sunday Clothes during our spring concert. So we'll keep you abreast of their progress, and we'll keep you abreast of the dates, schedules, and performances. Should be fun. It's just, we have a hot lunch task force that we created last time. So we put out a little invitation to the community, and we have, I believe, 14 members on our task force. And our first meeting is April 18th, which is next Wednesday. So if you haven't emailed or texted me, you can just show up, or you can email and text me and let me know that you'll be joining us. We'll have, I'm sure, very creative conversations, stimulating conversations, and we'll make sure we have snacks So come on and join in the conversation. Please save the date. We have a parent workshop around safety in our building, talking about just the climate that we are now living in. What are we providing our teachers to prepare them? What are we doing for our kids to prepare them? And we also want to make sure that we're informing you about what parents can do in the community to keep our kids safe. And that is on April 25th at 6 o'clock. The facilitators will be our school psychologist, Jessica Van Decker, Michael Williams, who's our guidance counselor, and Frank Gugliari, who is our regional safety coordinator. John will be there and I will be there. So we really want to keep it as an informative session, but also an open discussion, just talking about how we're feeling, what we're doing, and if you have any concerns, suggestions, recommendations, or accommodations, they are welcome then as well. Michael and Brian, our facility staff, they just installed our very first filtered water fountain, James Hoke. It's the first of many. It's a very busy water fountain.
Coordinating the cars.
I was yelling about it for a couple of years
Thank
ago.
you. So we are our first, and it's not our last, so we'll be working on them over time. Our next board meeting is on Tuesday, April 24th. Tuesday, April 24th, and that's when our presentation, the technology presentation, will take place. And tomorrow, our facilities committee is meeting at 5 o'clock, and we'll be meeting with our architects. That's what I have.
Questions for Laura? Comments? on
We
the-
got all the snow days taken care of, right?
Yes, we are in compliance.
Meaning what?
Dr. Sheepa is smiling too.
We will have 176, we will have had 176 days.
Correct, and 4 professional development days. We're supposed to have 180 days.
Right.
4 can be used for professional development, so we are in compliance.
So just to be clear, 180 is what the staff need to engage, correct?
That's what the state says we need to have.
Right.
The contract for staff is 185
I was
days.
gonna say, I thought it was 185.
Yeah. It's 185, but we've used
We had 9 snow days.
9 snow days, okay. so-
And did O'Neill have a give back and then take back?
We had a take back that we used,
Oh, okay.
so, yes.
Yeah, it was a hard winter on everybody. Weather, outages, lots of things.
Since
But
this year, half-days don't count towards a school day, how does it work with when you have a late start due to a snow delay?
It doesn't impact.
It still counts as a school day?
Yeah, or if we dismiss
Even though it's
early.
not- Gotcha.
But there are changes in the air where,
No announcement.
calendar-wise, and there may be some more flexibility in how we are able to use time. It's not going to be specific hours for a particular week, but it'll be a bucket of hours that are 180, that can equal 180, and we'll be able to be a little more innovative and flexible with time. That decision probably will be in June or July on the Board of Regents.
And just,
No,
You
go ahead,
see,
you first.
maybe then the chancellor proposed it today. There was a news about headline. So what was it? The proposal must have been made and approved
Right, it has
or
been approved, yeah.
adopted by the full Board of Regents. Okay.
There were some amendments, but this is really what we're waiting for. This is where we can be innovative when you talk about more about projects and collaboration with students, and not this very regimented time, set time, seat time.
okay. And how do, just for the purpose, for the public, can you explain how you come about forming the calendar, just the variables involved? Because we have parents who have older kids in O'Neill, older kids in Haldane, older kids in private school. How does that all work? Briefly.
So I love that Dr. Sheboy is here and John is here, because it is a collaboration between the high schools, and you're a different BOCES, and they follow a different, so O'Neill, Fort Montgomery, Highland Falls, Fort Montgomery follows BOCES, I'm assuming.
Orange Ulster.
And then we align ours with BOCES, which Haldane is included, but we do try to align it. But then there's also, we align them, but there's also, I feel, a culture that is embedded in our calendars as well. There are certain days, times that are important to a school culture. whether it's the Jewish holidays, or some folks really like the February full break, and they'll have a shorter Memorial Day. So we try to do the best we can. And then the makeup days are different too, than the snow days. So then that's when it gets a little murky, muddy, and frustrating for families, we understand. We also try to coordinate our parent evenings to make sure that they don't conflict, our graduations don't conflict. But there's a lot that goes
Performance
into
nights.
performance nights, which we could probably have more conversations about that.
I think the winter break and the spring break alignment probably the biggest thing.
But
Especially
sometimes
for-
that's different with the schools. I think this year we were different than Haldane. I don't know if we were the same as O'Neill.
I think we were the same as O'Neill, but different from Haldane
Yeah.
on the spring break. But,
Yeah.
so anyway, I
And
just
then the
wanted
snow
a
day-
chance
and the
snow days
for
jumped
people
in.
to understand.
I know
that
there are a lot of moving parts.
It's complicated
Right.
factors, but.
When does the 2018-19 calendar happen or get finalized?
Well, we haven't, we're still working on, I'm not sure, you've
We
finalized
adopted.
yours already.
Yes,
I
we
believe
adopted.
Haldane has finalized theirs as well. We were sort of waiting to see if the state was gonna make a decision, because that's where you could sort of, look at half days, longer days. But it was suggested or recommended, now that we're almost there, that to align our calendars with the proposed, with the anticipation that it will be passed. So we're going to meet next week, and start that process.
Laura, is this a different one than, I know they were talking about, like you couldn't have 2 days in a row of half days or 2 days in this? Is that off the table now and this new one is coming in?
It's different, yeah.
So the other one never happened then?
Well, districts could make a decision, they could have kept their half days, and states said that they probably wouldn't look at it closely. But there was a chance that the auditors could come in and audit your calendars, and that may impact your state aid. So we decided to just move to following the memorandum, the rules of the calendar from state ed.
Other questions for Laura? If not, John?
Good evening.
Principal, good evening.
I'd like to start off by, we haven't seen each other a lot lately.
Well,
So just going backwards in time, because I feel it necessary to acknowledge that the month of March here at the Garrison School centers around a lot around science learning. We had a fantastic participation rate in our science fair. Not only was the number of projects good, but I must say that the scientific thinking and creativity that went into projects this year were very impressive. We will have a lot of representation at the Tri-State Science and Technology Fair this year at all different levels, elementary and middle school. And it's the amount of volunteers it takes to really launch a successful science week. It's too numerous, and I'd be afraid of leaving somebody off, but I have to give a very special mention to one of our parents, Charlotte Janetta, who was the chair of the Science Week this week and did really an amazing amount of work to get that successful event run. We have one of our judges, Chip Marks. I'll thank you since you're here in person. One of those people who is a faithful judge every year. Not only do the students get a chance to really design an experiment, figure out a way to represent the data, but a big part of what I think makes our experience very special is the fact that they must then really present their learning to a judge, that there's an adjudication where they have to describe the scientific process they went through, answer some probing questions about it, and that all gets factors into ultimately who gets to go and represent us as we move forward to the next round of competition. So now that March is behind us and it is April, it is state testing season. I would like to just spend a few moments addressing a particular element of state testing that I think deserves a mention. Probably wouldn't be surprised that at this time of year there is a little a desire to see clarity from Albany, from state ed, specifically around the topic of student participation. Just like to share with you a few brief excerpts from a memo that was sent out in March from our Commissioner, Mary Ellen Elliott. The purpose of the memo was to basically provide a summary of federal and state requirements regarding student participation in New York State tests. She goes to really describe that a lot of the participation rate is dictated on the federal level through the Every Student Succeeds Act, and that at the federal level they do mandate that they would like to have, that they will have a 95% participation rate in state tests. That being said, when she goes to provide further clarity of how it plays out in New York State, she says the following, and I quote, "With the exception of certain areas in which parental consent is required, such as the Committee of Special Education, evaluations for students with disabilities, New York State does not have any laws regarding parental preferences pertaining to student participation in state assessments." She goes on to say the results from the assessments help to identify achievement gaps of different student populations. When many students do not take the state tests, educators find it harder to recognize these gaps and provide support and resources to the students who need them. So that's really the depth of advisement that we received when that was sent to us on March 28th. She does go on to say that similarly for students whose families have expressed a preference that their children not participate in a state assessment, the decision of what to do in those situations is best made at the local level. So I must say it was a fairly benign memo that really didn't cause us much concern. Laura and I are trying to see clarity on something that is a more recent communication from ESSA. ESSA is the Empire State School Administrators Association, who made a report of an in-person meeting with the commissioner that has a different onus on student participation. And according to the minutes that they sent out from that stakeholders meeting, it states that for buildings who do not meet the 95% participation rate, all non-testers below the threshold will be counted as non-proficient and will be reflected as such in school achievement results that are reported to the public. Commissioner Elliott stressed that all schools who do not meet the 95% participation rate will be required to submit annual detailed improvement plans specifying the steps they will be taking to increase their participation rate in the future. That advisement was received yesterday. The tests started today. So we did do due diligence in my communications with parents to request the 95% participation rate, to dictate the changes in the test that should ease concerns about student participation, namely that there was 1 day less of testing, so ELA is only 2 days, where in the past it's been 3. The same holding true for math. Once again, the state test being untimed. However, with that being said, we are in a position where our overall anticipated opt-out rate for the ELA is 21% this year, which means that we only have a 79% participation rate, obviously a far cry below the 95% that's required. I do have the breakdown by grade level, by elementary school, middle school, if anybody is interested in that level of detail, but obviously it's something that I wanted to bring to your attention.
Test takes place over 2 days.
Correct.
If you miss one, you're counted as missing the entire test.
If you miss one due to sickness, absence, you are able to have a makeup date after the 2-day administration period, and then you're fully participated. What we're running into, however, is not absences, but people are actually choosing to refuse to take the tests and sending notes saying, I don't want my child to take the test, and that's what becomes the non-participation.
So now with this new memo that just came out yesterday, there's been no time to let parents or anything know how important it is for the kids to participate, right?
That's correct.
And the state, of course, won't take that into account.
Well, there's two different things.
Well, the one that just came out yesterday.
Yeah, but that's from an association of school administrators. It is not guidance from State Department of Education. It summarizes their interpretation of the conversation with the chancellor. So it's not.
It's just enough to cause concern.
Right. It's enough to cause concern, exactly.
And we've reached out to BOCES to help all of us clarify this, to see where we stand.
I'm more concerned about whether all the parents are aware that there is a financial implication
Is there,
of kids not participating.
there's certainly a profile ramification, which would,
If it is true that all those non-participants
Right.
are considered non-proficient,
Right.
that means we're going into it with 20% of our student population being considered
No.
non-proficient
Right.
before any tests are scored.
but that would be on par with most of New York State, correct?
No.
Well, it depends. There are a lot of areas that have seen a great improvement in student participation.
21% opt out, grades 3 through 8. What's that in real numbers?
That is a
Around-
total enrollment across those 6 grades of 146, with 30 opting out and 116 taking the test.
So, okay, 30 opting out. What, and you need, but that's, okay.
Can you send us the breakdown?
I'm just,
You'd have to-
what is your sense on it? If you could, in theory,
Thanks.
get the, prevail upon or attempt to persuade those parents who have opted out to let their child participate in the makeup day, that would require a series of one-on-one conversations. What's your sense of what the likelihood of success in an effort like that would be?
It might have some. I have a feeling that there are, I believe that that there's some beliefs about state testings have solidified over the years. And even with the changes and improvements in the test, that I feel like there are some ingrained belief systems about whether kids should be taking the test.
So we're talking about 30, right? And how many would we need to flex?
We gotta get to, you're at 79%, you gotta get to 95,
Yeah.
so somebody else do the math.
Yeah.
You need about 25.
25.
You need about 25.
Yeah, okay, so can we, well, it's a little late. So, but is it possible to analyze the kinds of strategies that districts that have seen improved participation have taken and make some recommendations about how we go about at least putting to the public the argument that this is a benefit to the district, if not to, as well to the student to participate.
I know, yes, we could. I know anecdotally that a lot of the improvements have been with more affluent school districts where there's the potential to become a reward school. That has incentivized participation
I see.
in a lot of those districts.
We've been a reward school, and there are not many districts much more affluent than this one, so.
Yes,
All right.
I feel John's frustration is just sort of the lack of clarity in the last minute, and it is
Sure.
coming, it's not coming from our commissioner, it's coming from a memo
Yeah, no,
from an association.
what was our overall opt-out rate last year? Higher.
It was. I want to say it was close to 30. I could go back. Don't quote me though. I could go back.
You're 1/3, you're improved by 1/3, so.
Yeah.
Still, it doesn't matter. 94%, it could be 50% or 94%, but, well, that's not true, it does have an impact. If it's true that all non-participants are thereby rated non-proficient, then it does matter how far below 95% you get. That's
And it
the,
impacts the data analysis. State test results.
yeah, sure. Unless, of course, you're able to, right, because you don't do the analysis. You could run 2 sets of analyses, the official and the participatory, the participant proficiency rate.
Yeah,
Which
we
is
have-
something that in the notes from the stakeholders meeting that they do discuss, that there will be 2 metrics.
Two metrics.
Yes, they do mention that they will
Okay.
be doing 2 calculations.
Yeah.
And when do we undergo end of the year internal testing, John?
Internal testings are done 3 times a year.
Yeah,
So
when's
they're
the
done
last one for that?
The last ones are January, and the next ones will be late May or early June.
Okay.
Yeah. It does say that Second, SED will be using a second formula that will not count refusals in calculating the school achievement index, and that formula will be used mainly to assist with determining whether low achieving schools are eligible for intervention. So it's actually a calculation that they'll look at us and they say,
Yeah, you're not gonna get
you're not a low achieving school, so you're not gonna get anything.
Right.
We have pretty readily accessible data when it comes to the, forgive me, it's the Renaissance?
Star 360,
Yeah, Star 360, thank you. And so theoretically, we could have a in-house data presentation about the strategies we've done this year late in June or July.
Yes.
And we can see like whether there's been a shift, whether there's been impact based upon the strategies, and sort of support PD for next year or augment whatever.
We definitely can do that, and I monitor the data, especially the growth data, and it's actually very impressive data. One of the nice things about Star 360 is
Right.
they do a student growth proficiency rate.
Right.
And when you look at our classrooms, our growth rates are well over the 50%, mean growth that the system collects nationwide. So our growth data is good. So our local data is showing that we're doing good things. In just speaking with teachers today, they expressed enthusiasm for the students that did take the test, watching them employ a lot of strategies that you learned about at the last board meeting
Right.
about the test prep unit.
Right.
And really feeling that they anticipate that when you look at the test taker data, that they feel we're going to see some nice growth as
Right.
well.
I would not be opposed to seeing, one of my frustrations is we often get the state data in October, right, or November, and then we're like talking about something that happened 6 months ago, and it can be kind of frustrating. So maybe an internal data presentation at the end of the year would allow some real-time responses rather than the sort of 6-month delay thing. Okay. Just a suggestion.
Yeah, and we would love to talk about local data. We like that.
But the state.
John, that was a
takes
lot
that.
more, or?
No,
That's enough. I thought so. Any other questions for John?
I have a question.
Yes.
John, will we resume forest days this spring once it gets warm?
We will. There was a meeting of the Environmental Education Committee this week. I don't think it was timely enough to get the minutes into your memo today, but I can get them to you. Yes, we're planning. We've got some nice, exciting additions. We have some local expertise that will be offering some new activities in the forest that are very, very aligned with our mindfulness initiative. And I would be happy to make that publicly known and also talk offline because it's some good stuff there.
Great.
Yeah.
Other questions for John? If not, Sue, treasurer's reports.
We have the February treasurer's report. The first report is the multi-fund. Started out the month with $637,195.76. We have revenue, mostly 510 of the 543,566 came from the investment fund, which was a transfer. And the rest of it was just mostly miscellaneous income, some federal and state aid of $4,656. We had expenses of $484,915. So we ended up the month with $695,847.53 in the multi-fund. On the investment accounts, we started out the month with $8,669,443. Made interest of $1,956, and did the transfer to the multi-fund of 510. So we ended off the month with $8,161,379.41.
Do we have March to follow as well, or is it?
We didn't get the bank statements in time.
Okay,
for
fine.
this
So,
meeting,
all right, so we're
they'll
gonna
be at
approve.
the end of the month.
Right.
This is really a leftover from the canceled meeting.
Right. Questions for Sue on the April Treasurer's Report? If not, I have a resolution that the Board of Education of Garrison Union Free School District accepts the Treasurer's Report for February 2018 as presented.
So moved.
Second.
We have a second. All those in favor? Aye. No abstentions, no nays. Thank you for that, Sue. Okay. Budget status, revenue status, warrant reports. Boy, there are a lot of warrant
Yeah,
reports.
and they're all pretty much business as usual, so, unless there's any questions, I'll go right into the budget transfer.
Sure. Anybody has any questions on any of those individual warrant reports? No. So, okay. Yes, the budget transfer. Go ahead, Sue.
So the budget transfer you see here is quite large for us.
Right.
And again, it kind of goes back to the conversation we were having earlier. We've just seen a shift of more services and tuitions in special ed. So changing money from regular ed tuition, some salaries, diesel fuel, to put it in, for the most part, it's mostly outside services related to special ed and tuition costs that we're anticipating for the rest of this year.
So I'm sorry, outside services and tuition, or is it just the tuition, 108,000?
108,000,
Right.
but then BOCES services
Oh, at 35.
as well, and outside contractors.
Those are all special ed
It's all
related costs.
pretty much.
Okay.
I think actually the BOCES one is has to do with more of the TC. TIS, I always get the acronym a little bit mixed up, training, that one has to do with that.
You need our approval on that, right?
Yes.
Okay. Any questions on that budget transfer and where it's going, where it's coming from, or where it's going to? If not, resolve the Board of Education of Garrison Union Free School District approves budget transfer number 5 in the amount of $171,500.
So moved.
Second.
Have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
No abstentions, no nays. Thank you, Paul. Thanks, Sue. We have, I'm going to get back to my agenda, sorry. The consent agenda with, let's see, how many items? Go all the way to H. All right. Let's do this. Resolve the Board of Education Garrison Union Free School District approves the consent agenda items 6 as B through H as presented. The first is to accept the minutes of the March 14, 2018 board meeting. It was so long ago, but for those of you who want to refresh your memory, those minutes are in your package. We also approved the CSE recommendations, likewise in your package. Item D, approve the appointment of Jennifer Lentini, Robert Pape, and Lillian Moser as substitute teachers for the 2017-18 school year at a rate of $85 a day. A sports merger, that is to approve the sports merger for wrestling with Haldane and Putnam Valley School Districts for the 2018-19 school year. That's coming up. The relevant documents are in your package. A contract for health and welfare services, that is approved the 2017-18 contract for health and welfare services with the Somers Central School Districts for 3 students at a total cost of $2,959.89. The relevant document also in your package. Item G, approve the 2017-18 contract for health and welfare services with the Lakeland Central School District for 3 students at a cost of $3,435. That contract is in your package. And item last, approve the voting machine liability agreement with Putnam County for the May 15, 2018 budget vote and election. That contract is also in your package. I need a
So moved. So moved.
I need a second, and before we vote, any questions for Laura on any of this? These?
Go for it.
No, it's just the health and welfare agreements tend to run about $1,000 a student a year.
Every school is different.
Yeah.
It's how they do the calculation. It
Right.
depends on how many health staff that they have and
What their salaries
yeah, what their salaries are and the benefits are included.
Right,
So
I got it.
schools can run from under $500 per student to over 1,000 per
Right.
student. So it depends on their calculation.
What's in Somers?
I'm sorry,
What?
what
Those are-
school?
Those are out-of-district placements, right?
They're,
Well,
What happens with the health, it's,
Can be cap, okay, right.
Yeah.
thank you.
it's,
And Lakeland?
That's St.
Column
Lawrence.
okay, got it, okay. St.
Column
Column.
Okay, so everybody, if the student goes out of district and they are one of our students, they go to private school anywhere or parochial school, we have to pay for certain services. Some of those services including nurses, psychologists, social workers, okay, that we have to contribute based upon a calculation a certain amount of money for per student. We have 4 kids going to masters, we pay the Dobbs Ferry School District for specific health-related services at a specific rate per kid.
Used to be long ago, a lot of the schools didn't ask for that, but as the budgets got
Right.
tighter,
Clerical,
schools are all
really?
asking for it.
Clerical, really?
No other questions or comments?
Yeah, no, what's the, voting machine liability agreement? That sounds like a new one.
That loves the voting season.
It's not, that's
Every
the
year
same
since
one?
we've been using the scanning
The new
machines.
machines.
Yeah.
The county, they belong to the county for the
Right.
elections, and they want to make sure that we keep them safe here while they're here for 2 days. So we have
I just didn't remember that one before.
So, always, yeah. All those in favor?
Aye.
No abstentions, no nays. We have 2 discussion items. One, we can, I think, dispense with fairly quickly because I was at the meeting. That's a review of the committee meetings for the Finance Committee. And suffice to say, the Finance Committee spent its time reviewing the presentation that you just saw on the budget, and had nothing more to add than what Sue and Laura presented. But those minutes are in your package, for those of you who care to review them. Next item is invasives in the forest. I'm going to ask John to lead this discussion. I will, just by way of table setting, say we have been advised and become aware of the fact that there are certain invasive species have sort of settled themselves in and around the redoubt area of the school forest that's at the very summit, and that unless something is done to control them as they continue to propagate, access to the redoubt itself will become more and more difficult over time.
And this is the South Redoubt.
South Redoubt, not the North Redoubt. The North Redoubt's not on our
Or middle redoubt, depending on.
Middle Redoubt, which historian you talked to, right?
Yes.
So, John, the floor is
So
yours.
just by way of background for anybody who is unaware that the South Redoubt is a archaeological relic that is in the school forest and owned by the Garrison Union Free School District. It goes back to the Revolutionary War and was part of the defenses for West Point. There were different materials that redoubts were made of. Our South Redoubt is an earthenwork. Because it is at the peak and has been maintained over years, it is a place where it is a clearing from the deciduous forest. We have maintained vistas in the past and a grassy area near the redoubt at the top. The issue with having that sunny clearing is it is then prone to a particular invasive in this area called black swallowwort. Black swallowwort loves to find sunny places on the edge of deciduous forest, and that's what the South Redoubt is. It is something that in my education about black swallowwort is not unique to our property. Certainly Glenwood is very, very familiar with it, and I've spoken with them about their expertise. Chip is here as an expert with his property, and certainly knows of its effects on the areas to which he tends as well. Really what created a sense of urgency was back in the fall of 2017. There was an interest of the archaeologists. There are 2 archaeologists who are stationed at West Point who have done a considerable amount of work on the redoubts on the west side of the river to make sure that they're fully researched and apprised of what is there. They haven't done much work on the east side of the river. In touring with them and showing them the South Redoubt, the first thing they said was, "Oh my goodness, there is something very, very bad happening here, because the black swallowwort's root structures are really compromising the integrity of the South Redoubt itself." So it propelled a lot of us here in the district to do some due diligence about what can be done to remediate this particular species of invasives. Obviously with the intent first and foremost to look for those green alternatives. So when we're looking at green alternatives, we obviously are looking at whether we can remediate the black swallowwort by hand, which is very difficult because of the root structure, and once you break the root structure, you're basically propagating more growth. Controlled burns, which also had its negative impacts, especially on the border of a deciduous forest. And lastly, to actually hire goats. There is a company called Green Goats that have done a lot of good work in remediating invasives for a lot of property owners. Wouldn't you know that black swallowworts is one of the only species that goats will not eat? So it really has left us with little option but to look at a basically to look at a herbicide. So we have basically done research on those herbicides which would be effective. There are basically two sectors, two classifications: tricloper and glyphosate. Both of them have been used to affect on black swallowwort and have had some effectiveness. There are different pros and cons to both of them that we could certainly get more expertise before we were to, if we were to use an herbicide on our property, to make sure that we're making the best informed decision on which chemical we were to actually use. But basically it
leafed out. How accessible is the redoubt now? Or when it leaves out, is the accessibility issue really, is the redoubt accessible when all that black swallowwort leaves out later this month or next month? Chip, and Chip, please.
Yeah.
You're here as a...
So there is, so you're talking about to via vehicle, access to
Well,
vehicle?
no, just, I mean, we take the kids up there, there was a time, not that long ago, when the kids could walk in, around, and through and across the top of the redoubt and actually experience it.
Yeah,
And
there,
we
you
can
really
hold it.
can't, you can, there is usually, because of foot traffic, a narrow way up on top of the actual redoubt. Usually could take you maybe a quarter of the way around the structure. The growth prevents you from really walking down into the redoubt at all. So it's not, the actual redoubt itself is not very accessible.
Chip, you were going to say?
As far as the accessibility of the old road going up there, the machine I have, the Bobcat, could easily access that, drive up and drive back with equipment, whatever you need.
Yeah. Well, I'm taking my Ford, my pickup truck up there. So
Right, no,
that's easy.
way
to
back
get
when
to.
as well. No, I was more talking about the actual redoubt itself and for access for the kids when they do the Revolutionary War enactment, when they're up there in the school forest days and so forth.
Yeah, it definitely has compromised. I mean, it is thick and thorny, and you can't
It's
walk
like a
through it.
bramble? It's like a bramble?
Yeah, it's sort of like a milk. I guess like a milkweed is the.
You have a variety of invasives up there. The black swallowwort is a herbaceous, weak-stemmed plant, which will only grow about this high before it falls over. However, multiple stems will come out of a strong root system, and they will twine. They will climb to 8 feet or better if they've got something to climb on. They will twine around themselves, and they're like a rope. Then they fall over, and if you try to walk through this, it can easily trip you. If you try to pull 5 stems, you can't break them. But that's only one invasive. You also have thorny invasives up there, and they're all getting intermixed. So right now, you've kind of got a witch's brew of a lot of different invasive species.
So what's before us now? Whether we would authorize the use of herbicides on?
Well, I think maybe that, well, let me, before we get to that question, it's a good one, but let me, is there a seasonality to the control issue? And what,
There is a timing in terms of when you would want to apply the herbicide.
what's the time?
Impact.
What's the optimal time? to
Um,
apply?
Well, with trichopur, it's June, early July, basically, as the pods are flowering, right after the flowering, as the pods are beginning to develop. With glyphosate, it recommends 2 treatments in a year, June and August.
So to get back to David's question, I think maybe the sequence is, we need a licensed applicator to contract with to control this.
Yes.
All right, so.
I have spoken with licensed applicators and have received received some quotes. The one I have in front of me is actually from Josh over at Garrison Tree, and it comes down to about $1,600 per application.
Chip, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'd just like to add a couple of notes because John mentioned, and he's got the printouts there on using either glyphosate or triclopyr. And many years ago, it was probably the last time I used glyphosate. It was just starting in up at Castle Rock, and I remember treating some of it. And my experience was that it essentially laughed it off. Glyphosate is not that effective on black swallowwort. Last year I went to triclopyr, and I believe, and I'll find out in another month, just how effective it has been. But last fall, I checked one area where I had what I think may have been something like a redoubt up by me, which was absolutely covered with this stuff a few years ago. And I found about 5 plants where I had tens of thousands. For 2 years, I had put together my own organic herbicide, which was effective at taking things down to the ground but could not kill the root system. And after 2 years of multiple sprayings, I found that those root systems had so many reserve buds ready to come up that it would have taken, I don't know how many more years with my formulation to try to ultimately wear it down and kill it. Another thing about the glyphosate versus the triclopyr, glyphosate will kill microorganisms in the soil, whereas the triclopyr can actually be metabolized by organisms in the soil. Also, it has a very short life in the soil. It breaks down in sunlight in about 30 minutes, and it breaks down in the soil at varying rates depending on whether it's in plant tissue or not. But within a few months, it's basically all gone. Glyphosate, no one's really sure how long it persists, but it can persist.
Glyphosate is basically like Roundup is one of the brand names, whereas with triclopyr, that's usually like Garlon.
And the proposal you had, that John referenced a minute ago, that was for triclopyr or which of the two applicants?
I think
Didn't
the
specify.
costs are comparable.
And the costs are comparable in any case.
What's the water situation there? There's nothing running out of there into a stream or anything like that we have to worry about.
There are no active waterways right in that area. Obviously, everything.
I just wanted to ask the question.
No,
Yeah.
What's down the hill from there?
Diane's.
Knee.
Oh, no problem. Napalm.
My God.
As a further note, there's actually one formulation of triclopyr which is marketed to be sprayed on aquatic areas because it's not even poisonous for aquatic areas. They've done, quite a bit of development with that.
So I guess the question that I have is, since I know nothing about this, is there any controversy about this? I mean, if you had a botanist here, would there be any issues that they would raise that we should know about?
Well, listen, I'm sure you'd find somebody that would say you shouldn't use any chemicals. So I can't say that there would be nobody who would object to this. However, you're at a place where you've got to do a cost-benefit analysis. The herbicides, there are a lot of people that just don't want to use chemicals in nature, and that's certainly a very, very warranted, validated position. However, as Chip was saying, what we would want to use would be something that would have minimal impact, that's suitable for that environment, and is certainly addressing what we think is the pressing need, that we have a very, very rich piece of American Revolutionary War history that's being compromised by an invasive species.
That's one of the issues. The access for our students isn't one issue. The integrity of the readout itself is another, is probably the most pressing issue in some ways, right?
Yeah.
I have to point out an environmental concern when you're talking about using, because I compounded my own organic herbicide, which was a lot harder for me to use than triclopyr, and much more dangerous. And aside from that, the black swallowwort and the other species which are moving in here are not native to North America. And when you are talking about, we talk about using a chemical which will have maybe unforeseen, effects, but also being a chemical agent, which I'm not crazy about. But at the same time, the non-native invasive plants are chemical agents in and of themselves. Right. And what they are doing to the insect life and the microbial life and their surrounding plant life is amazingly damaging. They are displacing not only plant species, but insect species and mammal species. God only knows. John just said, goats won't eat this stuff. This stuff is so toxic.
Where does it come from?
It comes from, there are two species, and one comes from Ukraine and one comes from the Mediterranean.
Ah.
And
They could build a wall to keep the Ukrainians out.
Russian bots.
I pulled one up a couple of years ago. Somebody, was asking me what it was, and I went over and I pulled one up, and he was looking at it. It looks a little bit like a philodendron, and it's got very deep, beautiful green, deep leaves. And he said, I hate to say it, he says, but it looks rather attractive. And I said, everything being equal, yes, but I said, take a good look at this. There is not a hole in any leaf. Nothing eats it. It is so toxic.
Wow.
What's the level of confidence that an application of this herbicide will get rid of it?
I can tell you in about a month to 6 weeks because I was applying it last summer. I had applied some the year before at a lower concentration, and I had a mixed success. I upped the concentration last year, and there are two different formulations. One is oil-based, and the other is a salt. And I think I went to the oil-based. And I think what I was getting last year was close to 100% effectiveness.
And what's the name of that one? It's
Triclopyr.
Triclopyr.
And I use it in a sprayer, so I'm standing right there and I'm pointing it at exactly
No
what I'm
offense
spraying.
to Monsanto, but the Roundup doesn't have a wonderful political ring to it,
Roundup, in my opinion, is god-awful. I won't use it. Besides the fact, as I said, with my experience many years ago, I don't think it's that effective.
Well, I guess we listed this as a discussion item. So we don't need to take an action today, except perhaps to get a sense of the board that unless there's an objection, why don't we ask John and Laura or Sue to get a contract from a licensed applicator who can basically apply the triclopyr consistent with the descriptions that we've just heard, get a price for it, and we can approve it if we even need to approve that. I guess we would.
I think we'd have to approve it, but
And it's over a certain amount.
Yeah, well, we're talking about $1,600.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, depends on, to me, that's, maintenance of plant,
Yeah, I
basically, like,
agree.
you're not approving it, indirectly you are,
it's like a
because
tree
you're
trim or
approving the
something.
warrants, but, if
let
it's,
me put the question to you more directly. Do any of us have any concerns concerns sufficient that we would oppose
What's the
remediating, treating, and so forth?
What's
getting
the environmental
orders from them?
committee think about this?
They think it's a necessity.
Oh.
We've gone through all the alternatives, there's not a big, there was nobody that said, absolutely not, we shouldn't do this. Everybody's like, well, if that's where we are, let's get it done.
Have you talked to the garden club, to us garden club people, because we're GSA? Well, no, but it's garden, we've got access to, you know, higher up people that could give information on it, so.
I spoke, and I wish I remembered his name. I have to go back to my notes. There was one of the farmers at Glenwood who was very, very knowledgeable and had some great conversations with. And they actually might have some information on the effectiveness because I think that they have done some remediation. So we might have some local expertise in what was used and how it was. Chip, do you happen to know of anything about its usage at Glenwood?
No.
Okay. So that's something we could look into, because certainly I think they had a big issue.
I'll talk to Laura, because we have our luncheon next week, and maybe get Laura to come as a guest.
I mean, my feeling about it is we're not gonna take any kind of action tonight.
Right.
And, you know, I think that if people feel in principle, that more due diligence is desirable for each of us individually, we can do it. Or we can accept the environment committee's recommendation. I mean,
I think that's.
Well, I
that
think we
sounds
have,
fair.
I think Laura and John have to come up with a final decision on the pricing and all that stuff, so.
Well, so we can do
I was
those,
just
we
thinking
can do
if
those
there
on
was
parallel tracks.
Other options, that's all I was thinking.
but thank you,
And
Chip.
the other thing that's a benefit is it's not in school time.
Let me suggest something. Knowing the administrative workload, the enormous administrative workload that John and Laura already bear, if you're a member of the garden club and you know these people and you know what the resources are,
Okay,
phone them up.
ask away, I
Right,
will.
okay, that's good.
I will.
Thank you.
If I could make one more recommendation, that as you're doing this, do a botanical assessment. It isn't just black swallowwort, because there are other invasives which are also up there, which are also damaging. And I think the triclopyr, because they're all broadleaves, the triclopyr will go after all of them. I even had success with a grass plant, that Japanese silkgrass, which it seems to be taking over as well. But but you really need to go down the list and see what is up there, because you do have this Aurelia, which is a very thorny, nasty plant, and very solid rooted. And these things are moving in great numbers also. And do an assessment of all the species which you think are really harming that area up there. So you're not just going up there once and then having to go back and do
I
something
think the
else.
longer term, it's a good point, Chip, but I think the longer term issue, the thing the board needs to be aware of is that if we want this place to continue to be as special to us as it is, then it has to be part of our regular maintenance program as well. In the same way that we keep this building and the parking lot and the fields across the way, that has to be actively maintained.
I think a assessment or might be, could be run parallel too, but also a strategy for whatever preventative planning that might keep these other species from thriving.
I would suggest that you fan out from here. This is the school board, but this is really a community issue, because swallowwort is all over the place. These fields around here are full of it. And the swallowwort seeds are like milkweed seeds. They are born in little feathery areas. They've got fluff around them, so they float on the wind. I mean, they came from the fields and they're on top of South Redoubt because one seed can travel from here there with a good wind. So this area here is seeding up there. It isn't just a concern of the school. It should be the concern of everybody around here to go after this.
What about the meadow? That's part of the open space. I think it's part of open space up there that used to be the ski hill. That connects to
It's a mess.
Yeah.
That's like a total mess, right?
That's actually was on the minutes from the last environmental education committee, because there's a
Talk about
Yeah,
it.
ski slope, sure.
there's a
Ski
strong
slope.
desire actually to go to the ski bowl area there and do some work to encourage native growth. So that's actually something we've got scheduled for May.
That's not, but the ski slope, I should know this, but the ski slope's not on our property, is it?
It actually is.
Oh, is it? We have.
That meadow, if you look at our property line, there's an interesting little square that juts off of our school forest, which is that little meadow area.
Okay.
Yeah. While we're on this topic, I just want to quickly mention, since we're into Black Swallow Award right now,
Yeah.
is that if you've been up to the redoubt, there is a sign about a USDA experiment that's being conducted up there right now.
What?
And just wanted to make you aware
That's
that there was a researcher from Cornell, a guy by the name of Lindsay Milgrath, who is researching a biological agent, a moth from the Ukraine, that they just got that is the only species known to eat black swallow wort. They're not releasing the biological agent on our property. They have done post-range tests after USDA. They waited about 11 years for USDA to give approval for the release of this biological agent. They did a post-range study in Rhode Island. As soon as they did, they found out that it does not eat any other species. It eats black swallow wort. It has potential short-term spillover to other populations. But basically, as soon as the black swallow wort dies, the biological agent immediately declines. They are planning a 2018 release in western New York. They're currently monitoring 8 plots of our lands in the school forest for the proliferation of black swallow worts. There might be time in the future where they would ask permission to release the biological agent here in Garrison, and that would be obviously something that would come before the board at that point for
years. My understanding is that's years down the road.
That's
right?
correct.
I feel like I'm participating in a biological game of risk.
The
Ukrainians
the Ukrainian
against
laws
the
are
Western
they're
Koreans
embargoed.
against the East
Sounds
Koreans.
like the first scene of a horror movie. It's okay. This is benign, irrational thing to do.
We'll figure out what happens to Crimea after this. I don't know.
Well, I think the trouble is the Ukrainian laws are on the embargo list now. They're subject to tariffs. Anyway, all right.
I have a note.
Okay.
So about the ski slope,
Yeah.
Ed McGowan, who's the director of the Trailside Zoo at
Mhm.
Bear Mountain, suggested that we not do brush hogging at the ski slope, that, because it could destroy active birds' nests, box turtles in May, and so he suggested that we use weed wrenches, mattocks, and spades to remove the root systems. So,
That's a lot of work.
Appreciate it, but I think one invaded area at a time, all right?
A strategy for dealing with this would be good. And I think, Chip's right, there's we can manage it, but there is a community, there's a way that this stuff got there, and if we don't think about our properties and how our properties interrelate, so maybe this is something to bring to Phillipstown as well.
remember the days it used to just be poison ivy?
That you can get goats for.
So you don't have this kind of conversation at the O'Neill over there.
We do talk about trees.
All right.
If there's nothing more on this particular discussion item, we have 2 action items. One was previewed earlier. Resolution reads, resolve the Board of Education of Garrison Union Free School District adopts the proposed 2018-19 budget for the Garrison Union Free School District in the amount of $10,908,902 to be presented for voter consideration at the annual meeting on May 15, 2018, and the 2018-19 property tax report card as presented.
So moved.
Give me a
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
No abstentions, no nays. You have it, Sue. Well done. And on a related matter, resolve the Board of Education of Garrison Union Free School District approves a contract with Putnam County for real tax service, and be it further resolved that the superintendent be authorized to sign said contract.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Tell me what this one is again.
This is they print out tax bills for us and stuff them and
Got it.
give us, print the tax roll, so.
Got it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Abstentions, no nays. Well done, everyone. Public comment. I understand we have at least one and perhaps 2 individuals.
I think we have
3.
3. Crystal?
She waited so long.
Kristen, if you would, please just introduce yourself, use the microphones.
We have a student who has to get ready for a test tomorrow. Very important. So actually, well, I'll leave that in there. So this is sort of in regard to the conversation we had at the last meeting about the climate change resolution. This is going to fall over on me. So I have a student with me, Sam, who got to put into practice in Mr. Keegan's science class this activity of like, what if Garrison went geothermal? And then he presented at the Eco Action Day along with Caroline Nelson. And he wanted to come and just share a little bit of what he learned in class with you. And this is going to fall over.
I think if you just
If we leave it,
leave
it's
it,
gonna
it'll
be okay.
seek its own level.
All right.
Anyways, I'm gonna let Sam come so he can go back and study.
Oh, look, he knows how to fix it.
Hey,
Sam, I'm sorry, your last name is?
Smith, Sam Smith.
Hi,
I'm
Sam.
just gonna kind of cover a few things about the heating and cooling system in the school. It was I wrote down a bunch, not more than I needed, but for our oil costs for the heating in the school, we kind of gathered up the last 10 years altogether and got about an average of $54,807 a year on average for our oil costs. And our oil consumption was up to 23,000 gallons a year. And so, and the average cost per year is $2.44 a gallon. So we were using a lot of gas for the building, but another like alternative to that, instead of using all the oils which would produce gases and carbon dioxides into the air, as like a geothermal heating system, which is draws energy from the ground from pipes. It draws the pipes go underground. There's several types you can have. It depends on your area. If like you're in an area where there's a small one, I don't remember what it's called, but it's a system where it goes into just real like small holes. It can go down to about 400 feet to the ground underground. There's one if you're by a lake, you could have a certain system for a lake, a well system, or you could have one if you have enough space. It's someone that kind of does like a big kind of loop in a big area. And so there's different kinds you could get, but what it does overall for us, it would save money and lower the carbon emissions that we release here. And the one thing, I mean, that would be probably the biggest downside would be the installation cost, because the yearly cost is much lower than we have for the oil. And also for the oil machines, a lot of them, and I'm sure it does too, requires energy to keep it running, and so that also rises the electricity bill along with the heating. And so installation ranges from about 9,000 to 10,000 per ton. And for us, well, for really, you need about 750 square feet per ton to heat and cool the school. And school's about 59,000 square feet. And so at the cheapest, it would be about $708,000, which is a lot. And the most expensive, it doesn't get too farther away from that, but it is still pretty expensive, getting over to $750,000 at 786,666, which is a huge number to pay off. You'd have to get a lot of fundraisers or possibly a grant or something from just someone local, or just fundraisers overall to help raise money. But about overall, the utility bill would be reduced to about 40 to 60%. In the payback range from about 2 to 10 years, but overall from got more on the back. But his lifetime is 18 to 23 years. So overall, since the payback time at the longest would be 10 years, which is, it probably wouldn't be 10 years, but since his lifetime would be 18 to 23, overall you would make money off of installing it. And we are eligible for a ground source heat pump rebate, which would also help lower the cost of installation. And the oil, yeah, I already mentioned that. With the geothermal, the utility bill, compared to the one that we have, the oil, is $40,000 a year. So which would also help quickly getting back the money that we spent on installation. And once we start getting back money from saving money that we did, that could go to also further stuff for either the teachers or use supplies for the school overall. And also, we also don't, right now, I'm pretty sure the school doesn't have a, like, actual cooling system, like it would for geothermal. I'm fairly, new, so I don't know too much,
You're
but,
right.
Wait till graduation.
the installation would be, and nowhere near what it would be for the geothermal, would be about, for, a little under, 5,000, but, if we did it, because right now, it doesn't seem, like, the best idea to install a cooling system by the way the weather's been going. But even though it would cost a bit overall, in the long run it would help out the school, because at some point we won't have the cooling system. And on certain when it could get to hot days, eventually, I hope so. But it would just get real hot in school, and overall that would not just affect just your overall like how you're sweating, but also just the attitudes in classrooms and the work going on.
Mold as well.
Yeah.
Mold as well.
Oh yeah, mold. A lot of mold. Yeah. And then also a lot of some of the more advantages would include there's more room when installing it above ground than an oil heater, so you'd have more room in the over where you set it up. It wouldn't take up as much room, so it would also just be smaller than an oil heater. What else? It produces no carbon dioxide emissions. So compared to oil, which produces a lot since it is oil, this just produces none because it does come from the earth, and so none gets produced from it. What else? And the carbon, and a lot of these advantages mentioned here, a lot of them aren't money wise or budget wise. It's more like overall wise, but the carbon footprint annually would be reduced by 205 metric tons of carbon into the air. So taking all that, just one school like ours, this size of the school, would take out that much, which is a lot. And some of the disadvantages of just having the oil heating already is puffbacks from the heater itself, which cause respiratory problems, which could build up your lungs and cause certain things like lung cancer or things in that overall area. Oil spills in the places that we do buy them from, so which would also be worse for the environment. I mean, not as bad as seeing some of the oils like the BP oil spill. Because that's a little ridiculous, the thing that do that. But it would cause possibly a few oil spills in the area, which would be dangerous for them in the area. I already mentioned the electricity it causes to operate, which would cause also your electric bill to go higher. So also, by installing the geothermal, the heating and cooling bill would go down as long as the electricity. You're not using electricity to power the big oil heater to heat the entire school. What else? It's just high maintenance too, oil heater, because you got to keep up and check on it every now and again to see if it's still working or if it has any problems with it, because it is like a big machine, and then it causes electricity to produce, and every now and again you got to check up on stuff like that. That's real big, like your car. Every now and again you got to see if there's something like check engine light. Oh, I got to check the engine. And also when refining crude oils, millions of pounds of carcinogenic chemicals are released. So once during the process of it, the crude oils, when they are refined, it releases millions of carcinogenic chemicals, or a form of a carbon footprint that you would form. So really, it would just even though it would be very expensive at first. Which might kind of overall throw you off because it's very expensive, and so but overall you would save money and gain money in the long run because of its lifetime. about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Do you know if, is there a New York State, I think it's called NYSERDA, is there a subsidy, or do they help you do this, the installation, do you know?
Actually, yeah, in NYSERDA or NYSERDA.
NYSERDA, yeah.
Yeah, that's actually where I got a lot of this from. And so from that also, that's where we found out, I'm pretty sure that's where we found about the ground source heat pump rebate. And
How much of a rebate is it?
on the thing, we didn't find out how much of the rebate it was, but I mean, I don't think it'd be something like, you know, a huge percentage, but probably like a fairly good percentage, you know, maybe around like, I'm just guessing like maybe 10, 15.
David, you're in 8th grade, right? Is that
Yes, sir.
Sam, sorry, Sam. That's David, right?
You can call him Sam now.
Are you 8th grade?
Yes, sir.
Well, I just got to tell you, I'm very impressed. First of all, I've never seen anyone, I've seen lots of science fair presentations, lots of projects, where someone has balanced both the science and the economics of a topic as well as you have. So you really ought to be proud. And kudos to your teachers and all who helped you, and everybody else who have pulled this together. You'll be happy to know that one of the things that we've been talking about as a board is a fairly substantial capital project to basically make fundamental improvements to the entire building. One of the things our engineers have talked to us about is the very subject you're talking about, how we heat and cool the place. And one of the charges that we've given to them is to find the way to do it most economically. And they're very smart guys. They know about these kind of things, and we'll continue to consult with them about whether or not, when it really comes down to actually building the building or redoing the building, the capital project, this sort of fits in there. But this gives them and us a lot to think about, so I really do appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thanks,
Well
Sam.
done.
And he fixed the microphone.
Yeah. Well done. Lisa, did you have something, or?
Well, actually, sorry, one more thing, then I'll turn it over. So I actually wanted to give you this updated 10-2. So that's just,
Just an update on the material you gave us.
yeah, so it's Crystal again. So I had actually, after our last conversation, I just started a petition just to see what kind of community support would there be if, you know, we were asking the board to pass a climate change resolution, just to see if people supported the idea. And I got 83 signatures, which is good for Garrison. And I also got testimonial from one of your 2009 alumna. I don't know if you remember, anyone remembers Lindy Labriola? So I would like to read her email, because she's actually in the Arctic right now doing climate change stuff, so I feel like it's really pertinent. So it's been a long time since I've been at the Garrison School, but I remember it fondly and love it deeply for giving me a solid educational foundation for the path I follow today. In May 2017, I graduated from Amherst College with a degree in geology and English, and have since moved to Norway to undertake a Fulbright fellowship studying the effects of climate change in the Arctic Circle. After growing up in the small but strong community, I entered my early adult life with a steady confidence in the truth that many hands make light work. At Amherst, I founded an environmental magazine. Don't worry, we printed on recycled paper, as well as the college's first carbon pricing campaign. I also started a grassroots charity that provides free renewable energy to struggling and/or marginalized communities across the country. With the help of a strong community, I have given Amherst College students a platform to voice their environmental opinions and concerns. I've convinced the college to commit to carbon neutrality, and a charity that has funded a 15-kilowatt solar installation in Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in South Dakota. These are the fruits I harvested from the seeds of community that Gus planted in me so long ago. It would distress me if the Garrison School Board failed to take climate change seriously. That is, if they failed to harness the power of this amazing community to combat one of the most massive challenges our species have ever experienced. There is an abundance of opportunities for students to engage in conversation, education, and action surrounding climate change, to encourage them to think critically about their future and take responsibility for their actions. It would be remiss for the school to let this go well untapped. Soon enough, we will not be able to apply the simply let it go because it will be present. Now that I've traveled over 3,000 miles northeast to study Arctic municipalities, I am surer than ever that the local level has the most potential to combat and effectively mitigate the effects of climate change. By educating and supporting our youths and understanding how our behaviors affect the environment, we ensure a brighter and better world for those who have no choice but to inherit it. You are shaping the minds of tomorrow, and they deserve to be well informed and to know that their community is capable of accomplishing it together. Thank you, and warmest wishes from the frigid Arctic, Lindy Labriola.
Can I
Well
just
done,
ask,
Crystal. Thank you.
I just want to ask one thing.
Yeah.
I think I read, you said that no one in New York State, none of the schools have.
None in New York State.
Is that right?
Yes, because it actually started in California in 2017, December, and since then there have been actually 10 Colorado like just a week ago or 2 weeks ago. And I found it because I wanted to do something else, and then I latched on to the idea, and I was like, we should bring it to New York. So this same process has been started at Haldane. I had a couple of Haldane environmental students in 11th grade present it to the Board of Ed last week too. So the PTA at Haldane asked me to go and present to them next week because listening is not like me. They want me to present to them and see how the PTA can sort of build up that support to help the board, because really at the end of the day, we don't want to make more work for you. We don't want to, we don't want money. We just want to be able to give recommendations. For instance, like we had this wonderful student who's, talking about geothermal. So there's a lot of possibilities, and I just feel like part of this is just it's like a declaration. It's not necessarily like that you have to do anything. I feel like the community can do some of the legwork for you. So, and I know you're not ready to commit to anything yet, but it's just ongoing conversation.
So let me get this straight. So what you're saying is that this climate change stuff isn't a Chinese hoax to undermine American industry?
It might be, but
That doesn't.
Right in words.
97%.
Thank you, Christy.
I think you wouldn't be surprised, Crystal, to find out that many presidents of many colleges have signed such declarations to bind together to figure out. Many boards of many colleges have signed on, and what that means is there's a lot of symbolic gesture in it, but it has created all kinds of opportunities. Right now at my college at Ramapo College in New Jersey, the entire parking lot is being fitted with solar panels that students will be parking under, and from there will be electric plug-ins for faculty and staff to encourage purchasing of hybrids.
I just want to say seriously about what Crystal is proposing is that
It's mostly a function.
this goes beyond the college thing. This is about communities around the country making a statement from the bottom up. And I've noticed that some congressional figures, including our very own dear Sean Patrick, is now taking this issue much more seriously than he did a while ago. And I think part of that's because he's hearing from people in the community that this is a big deal. And they're doing it in spite of the fact that the national media, essentially the national television media, is essentially boycotting this issue. So it's extremely important what she's proposing.
Well, at least they're overwhelmed. But I think I appreciate the focus, and I think it's something we should take very seriously. So I meant to mention the college thing only because it's not unheard of for educators to take a stand or a position on that.
Good point.
That's
Can we put
Did
it
we
on
have-
one of the agendas?
Lisa, did you have something? Oh,
she said.
Lisa, Sarah.
Yeah.
I know you got this is a tag team.
I think we have our focus right this time.
Yes.
It's a small group. We will introduce ourselves. So I'm Lisa Rassick, the president of the Garrison Children's Education Fund.
I'm Sarah Tormey, the vice president of the Education Fund. And we are here with an update on one of our favorite topics right now, playgrounds.
Yeah.
I know, I was excited. Since our last presentation about the proposed playground, we are really excited to share that we not only have estimates on excavation, which I heard from Michael, and we should have a very formal bid for it from Polhemus, but it is about $5,000 is what we're looking at.
Which
for
also
excavation.
Which is in
That
line with what you
includes the stump
speculated
removal.
on last time,
So
right?
stump and, I'm sorry.
No, that's in line with what we talked about last time.
So I think I'd like to wait to get a formal one from that, because Michael had some very good questions about how we install the mulch as well, which is very important. And I don't, I don't feel comfortable speaking to that, because I don't quite understand the terminology on that. But we are also excited to share that we are $20,000 closer to our fundraising goal
Congratulations.
right now. Yes. These funds are in addition to the $25,000 that GSEF pledged from our fund. So we are
Pretty
making,
thrilled.
yeah, we're making great progress for playgrounds.
Exactly. So with this progress, of course, we're thinking we put a lot of consideration into and time and energy into how we would like to recognize our donors, and we've gathered input from many voices. This is one of the largest programs that GSEF has embraced in recent years. You mentioned Hello Dolly and the 50th year anniversary for GSEF. It's 2018 is our 20th anniversary. And if my facts are correct, GSEF was launched to actually fund the current and existing playground. And along the way, they also put in the pavilion. People don't tend to know that, not even GSEF board members. So I'll get to that. But in any case, we as a board feel strongly that we want to develop further our culture of giving. This is a strategic plan that was actually put in place 4 or 5 years ago with the board. And we also want to further our culture of gratitude. We see donor recognition as a way to share with the community the work that GSEF can do for our public school, which, as we see every time we look at these budgets, that Steve puts forward, the budget is challenged more and more so every year. And there are always even more demands put on that budget. And so we believe that it is up to our public. If we want the best school and the greatest school, it is also up to us to help support our administration and our board here. So we looked at what other public institutions in our community have done, from named bricks and bleachers at Haldane to a plaque that was recently presented as part of the Desmond Fish Library's new innovation lab. Also, the Phillipstown Recreation Center is offering tables that can be named by a family or a business for certain consideration of funds.
We also went and looked at what other schools, elementary, are doing in this area to recognize donors, and how they were going about raising the money. When we came about this idea, we wanted to make it really a one-year campaign if possible, because the need is now, and we wanted to get something happening now. And that really, the enthusiasm we're seeing is part of that, because it will happen for our kids with your approval. This summer, and that's something that's special to the parents who are here. So, one example we came across was Cascade Elementary School in Washington, included a change drive. We're working on the PTA about something in relation to that. And while this part of the fundraising was designed to give students ownership of the project, the Cascade campaign in particular also included a recognition wall. And through my research, I have lots of it. It indicates that plaques and signs are a great way to motivate the community to give, and also give it new levels beyond what they have been giving to us in the past. And we discussed a lot of different options. I can present you a long list other than plaques, which we are suggesting today, for everything from tiled walls to pavers. When we were initially talking about this, we talked about naming equipment and moved away from that. we felt that the proposed sign we have,
Oh, yeah.
we have copies here for you tonight, that lists the children of the Garrison Union Free Schools on it, and does not reference any dollar amounts, but instead has playful indications of our donor levels, play with me, run with me, skip with me, would be a nice way to recognize the private donations that we feel are critical in this budget era to helping our public institutions achieve greatness.
So these are actually, I'm sorry, this represents the actual size at this point that we've quoted and drafted. And also, we have a statement of what we call gratitude at the top. This is all still being a wordsmith. We've talked recently about including the position or acknowledging that this is 20 years of GSEF, and we would like for our community to understand that by supporting an organization like GSEF or the PTA or whatever it may be, that your support actually means something and does something. So it is a draft.
And we feel that this will help us also in the future with other campaigns as we look to see what else we can do to help the school with some of the shortfalls in the budget.
Okay.
Yeah. Or like, if you have any questions?
So the idea would be, one, just
Yeah.
a plaque.
A plaque.
This size,
That is the size.
with names to be included,
Yes.
would be positioned somewhere
Somewhere, placement is,
adjacent to or around.
we've had lots of
the playground.
discussions with the administration about placement. We are very open on that. We want to, it's up to what we feel as a community is best. We've listened to the administration's thoughts on it. We'd love to hear yours. So.
I don't have an initial reaction. Other than, let me just ask, is it a proposal that the playground be called the Children's Education Fund Playground?
We would like,
Is that your proposal?
our proposal is to recognize that GSEF granted the funds for this portion of the playground. And I think that is important in that it will help us, when people arrive at the school or are learning about GSEF, what is GSEF? And it helps us point to this is something GSEF has done in the past. And recognition.
There's not just the plaque, but there's also the naming question there too. The
Yeah.
playground
That
be
is.
named.
Yes.
And it's your request, proposal, that it be named the Garrison Children's Education Fund Playground.
This section of it, and with your approval, but.
Okay, no, I just
Yes,
wanted to be
yes.
sure what we were being asked to consider.
Mhm.
So first of all, to this community and to any kid in the area who wants to experience this, and I think that's great, and I understand why you've gone this route. I suppose in the interest of total candor, I'm a little uncomfortable about the idea. I understand what you've done, and you've found a more benign way of indicating the levels of contribution. I would have preferred myself that there be absolutely no distinction between categories of people, because I think that's the spirit of this community. I think some people have more money than others, and kids are probably going to figure out what this means. So I'm not crazy about that, to be perfectly honest. But I also very deeply, I don't want to be misunderstood. I really appreciate what you've done and how much effort you put into it, and I think it's going to be a great facility. My preference would be that you just put down the names of people who contribute.
Let me suggest, we've got to get a proposal before us for the type of mulch. We've got to approve a contract for the, so this is a topic to be discussed. We can put it on the agenda. At the time we have a proposal to approve, we can also take up naming and recognition, which to my mind are two related but nonetheless distinct issues. So what are
We
the
just
plans?
want to make sure you had.
No,
this
absolutely.
information
It's good to know that
in
this
front of
issue is out there and that's
Keep you
what you're
updated,
thinking
so you
about.
know,
Oh, absolutely.
on everything from mulch to class.
So do I understand you, not to go back to the beginning of the presentation, are you 5,000 away from your goal? Is that?
Yes,
Well, I
and we're
heard.
now looking at bidding out additional equipment. We have started running, our initial proposal when they started this last year was $100,000. We're looking at what else we can put in around that pavilion.
Should we
we're-
exceed our goal?
Should you exceed the goal, right?
Yes,
Right.
we are starting to figure out what the insurance company will allow us to put in. We have some big dreams. Apparently, you can't do something 17 foot high, but you know, it would be cool too.
Gee.
You know what? If we saw it, we would want it.
You might run into some, black sparrow wart or something.
Do you have so you're 5,000 off the $50,000 goal. Have you set
Yes.
I'm not a development person, so I don't know. Do you usually set an end date? That by this date, we will have achieved our goal or not, or do you sort of keep that open? And if it's
Because
the latter,
I think,
what do you
because
do?
originally we
For-
do think that the playground could do much more.
Mhm.
We set what we thought, and we've been very pleased and gratified that the community has stepped forward. We're not done in our outreach, in fact.
When you were here last, you had 25 or so, and banked 25,000 in commitments and actual.
We
Cash
were
on
here
hand, right?
last, we had about 10,000.
Okay.
And in addition to the 25,000 that GSEP has granted from our fund.
Oh, I see. Okay, right.
So there's
Well,
an
either way, that's good.
existing gift
Right.
net of 25 that they granted from existing funds.
Right.
And now they've raised $20,000
On top of that.
Right.
on
And-
top of that.
But you had
In
10.
advance of our spring.
Right.
Right.
Either way, that's still
Right.
you're absolutely right. It's a very impressive.
So you've got 40,000 now?
45.
45.
We have 45.
Right, and the goal was,
The goal, our original goal was 50.
Right,
Our original
so now-
budget, but we would have
right.
liked to have had a $100,000 playground, but, you know,
Yeah,
based on our recent history with raising funds, that was out of the question.
that's great, that's great. It's a
So
good
we're-
problem to have.
it's a
The
great
mercury's coming out of the thermometer.
I got
So-
one quick thing,
No, just
Ray,
one
maybe
other-
you could answer this. The age for this playground, is it,
It's
The
5
5 to 15.
It's 5 through 15.
so it is the whole school?
Yes, it'll be the whole school student body, but it is really gonna primarily attract the elementary school students in grades 1st through 3rd who don't have a play structure right now. And maybe the middle school students will love it so much they'll embrace it. I don't know, I don't have a middle school, I don't know how much they play by 8th grade, but
Is the location set, or is that up for discussion also?
We placed it around the pavilion in anticipation for like a phase 2. If the capital project goes through, the playground is included in that, so that if the capital project is approved, we won't have to move any equipment, so that it's strategically placed so that it will not.
But now we're moving the elementary play area up, basically then. So these are staying down and lower, and then you just have another one up in the top.
Get everything staying for now.
Yeah.
We're just adding. And around the pavilion, because we want to attract community members.
Yeah.
So parents who are sitting in the pavilion can watch their kids.
But how will that
chit-chat.
affect how will that affect the teachers that are with the lower grades in 2 different spots?
We'll have to, create
Yeah, I just wanted-
supervision.
yeah.
the lower playground is currently only used by the kindergarten class.
The lower level,
Yes.
yes.
And they're generally not out at the same time, is my understanding.
And kindergartens do that.
While we're on the subject, and just out of curiosity, is that our playground on the other side of 90 crossing? Is that St. Philip's or is that ours?
That's yours, you own that.
I do.
You
Is
need
it-
to mulch it. You
Right
need
now
new
it's-
orders.
Or take it down. I mean, what do we use it for?
Actually, I think when it's open, it's used quite a bit from personal experience.
Yeah.
When you're, as a parent or as a caregiver, when you're taking your older child to lacrosse practice or
Yes.
soccer
very good.
practice
Okay,
or whatever it may
cool.
be, your younger child is
And
Yeah,
during
no,
the,
no,
and
no,
during the
fine.
games.
It's very
too.
convenient.
There had been an interest, and this is something we can explore further as well, when John brought us the Dan and Yogurt grant to our attention last summer. The intention of that grant was to take out that equipment and put in stations for older students who are doing
No, because it's
like, yeah,
Strength building.
strength building that could be used by the community as well. Because it is recognized that playground currently is caution taped off right now because there isn't sufficient mulch underneath it for all that. And it also needs new borders in it. Which Michael is aware of this and working on this issue as well, but there's a lot we could do with that space as well in the future. We felt the need was to put the playground up above behind the school where the students would use it more during recess.
And also specifically because they're first, second, and third graders who, as we've mentioned, actually do not have a structure, and that's news to a lot of parents.
So, when are we together next, and is it reasonable to think we'll have proposals for mulching installation, all that stuff at our next meeting, or the meeting after that, or our year is winding down, so
Yeah,
that's why I
yes,
wanna
I
move
feel
on
that,
this.
the mulch estimate is fairly solid now. We should have a formal proposals very soon,
Okay.
as well as the excavation. So
And we're together on the 22nd, the Tuesday meeting? or
The 24th, yes.
Well, all right, we'll know as we get closer
I'll
whether we
work
can
with
put
Laura
something
on that
on.
to make sure you
Yeah.
have whatever estimates.
We just don't wanna let it slip because of a
No.
calendar issue. 'Cause
Right.
we only get together once a month, sometimes twice, but.
Ideally, yeah.
They are not.
I don't see
gonna
that
let us-
happening. I
Yeah,
think
they're not gonna let it come.
I was gonna say, this doesn't sound like
I know
something
you
that's
guys
gonna
calendar
slip, no.
pretty well. I know when I need to order the equipment in order to make this happen. So
And
we
you-
have a couple different dates
Well,
out.
at
Okay,
this
so
point, we do
your
have-
critical path includes, envisions an installation over the summer then?
It does.
Okay.
With an 8-week, we do not want to store this equipment, so
Right,
once we
so-
order it, we want to have it shipped here, so we don't
You want to have the
storage.
site ready,
Mhm.
equipment shows up, and it's installed, got it. Okay.
And then
Any
an
other
opening
questions from
ceremony in
you?
the fall.
How did you want to proceed with the plaque?
Let's reflect on this. And we'll have a chance to discuss this. Like I said, this was a public comment period.
Mhm.
Turned it into something of a discussion item, which is fine. But I think if you want to put this on the agenda at the same time we're approving mulch and installation and all of that other stuff, and we can have reflected a little bit ourselves on what, what we'd like to do, then we'll take a look at that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want these back, guys?
That's okay. Do you want this?
It was my,
It's interesting. I mean, if you'd like to have one for your file, I
Yeah,
can
why
have
don't
Why
one.
don't you take, we'll take
Why don't
one
you
and then you
keep-
figure out how to
Leave
repurpose the
Carl's
others.
down over there.
Just as a, all right. I said we would take this up as a discussion item, but my curiosity has gotten the better of me. Presumably, you'll have more donors at the bottom of the plaque than you will at the very top. So you'll accommodate that in
Yes.
various point sizes or
No,
something?
actually, the point size should be, if it's still this size, unless we really blow out with donors, the point size should be 25 point,
Is there a,
uniformly.
and I know it's not
At
gold,
least-
platinum, gold, silver, whatever. Is there a threshold donation for getting on the plaque at the bottom level?
Yes, we do have, we are not going to show those, or we're not proposing to show those on a final plaque.
Right, well,
But, yes, the minimum threshold is $250
to get on the plaque.
to get on the plaque.
Okay.
And then the other
They
thresholds
increase
graduate.
from there, got it.
Yes.
That was set to research into what other schools have done. We thought-
Right, I get
Well, it's always reasonable based on the giving history over the past,
because
with the records that we have, which is
the questions are related. When I said how many names you're gonna have at the bottom, you know how many $250
Yeah.
donors you have, so you can accommodate them.
Yes.
Got it, okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
You making the plaque?
No, I already did one plaque this year.
Okay.
So, any other public comment? You got- Aye. No nays. Thank you all very much for coming.
Have a great day, everyone.
Frank, thank you again.